In our next lesson, we're going to talk about equations of circles. We're going to use a concept called completing the square. So I'm going to give you a little background into that, and then I'll show you how it works. So this square is going to represent x squared. So it's a square with dimensions x on each side. So let's say I wanted to take an expression like x squared plus 4x, and I wanted to create something that would factor into some quantity squared. So here's what we do. X squared plus 4x, that 4x right there, I'm going to split it into pieces and make this a plus 2. And over here on this side, this will be a plus 2. So notice I've got dimensions of x plus 2 by x plus 2, and this is almost a square. If you notice, this whole thing would make a square if I had this little corner filled in. So what's missing from that corner? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I add 4 to my piece here, that'll finish off the square and allow me to factor it into a quantity squared. So that's the concept behind completing the square. If that doesn't perfectly make sense, it's okay, because you'll see how it works in our equations. But that's the concept behind what we're going to do. So remember, the equation of a circle was x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And that is great if they give us the equation in this exact form. We can pick the center and the radius and be done. But today they're not giving us the equation in standard form yet. They're giving it to us in general form. And we're going to have to create the standard form. So here's what we do. We want to get all of our x's and y's on the same side. And any number that does not have an x or a y is going to go on the other side. So right now I'm going to subtract 6x, and I'm going to add y squared, and I'm going to leave the 11 because it didn't have an x or a y. So we'll group the x's together, we'll group the y's together, and now we're going to do this process of completing the square. So what I do here is I've got x squared minus 6x, and I'm going to put a box to represent what number I'm going to add to complete this square. Right here, I'm going to do y squared plus 8y plus another box equals 11. And over here, we're going to say whatever I add to the left side, I have to add the same thing to the right side. So I'm going to put my 2 boxes to represent whatever I'm going to add. Now, the way I figure out what do I need to add to this side to allow it to be factored as something squared. What we do, there's a little formula to it. I take half of this number, so negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3, and then I'm going to square it and put 9. If I put a plus 9 right here, this x squared minus 6x plus 9 can be factored into x minus 3 squared. I have completed the square. Now, whatever I add to the left side of the equation, I have to also add to the right side of the equation. Plus 9, plus 9. We do the same thing for this piece. Y squared plus 8y plus some number to complete this square. We do the same process. We take this number divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and then we square it to get 16. And now I can factor y squared plus 8y plus 16 to be y plus 4 quantity squared. And remember, I add 16 to the left side, so I have to add 16 to the right side. And if I add all of this together, I get 36. Now I have an equation in standard form, and from this I can pull the center and the radius. The center here is represented by hk. So notice this says x minus h and y minus k. So our hk is actually the opposite sign of what it says in the equation. R squared, because r represents the radius. So the number that is in our standard form is squared. We're going to take the square root of it to get the radius. So for this particular circle, I have a center of 3, -4, x minus h, y minus k. You have to imagine that this says y minus -4, so that -4 is your y coordinate of the center. And 36 is my r squared, so my radius is actually 6. So completing the square, we grouped our x's and y's. Whatever number it took to complete the square here, I added to both sides. And we're going to practice that process a couple more times. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2 says x squared plus y squared equals 16 plus 6y. So I'm going to group all my x's and y's together. X squared plus y squared minus 6y equals 16. Now notice there isn't an x value, there's just an x squared. So I'm going to leave x squared alone. That's going to have a coordinate of 0. So that part's easy. My y's, I'm going to group them together and find the number to complete the square. And whatever number that is, I will add it to both sides. So in this one, we take this number divided by 2. Half of 6 is -3. And I square it to get 9. So I add 9 to both sides. So my equation says x squared plus, this now factors to be y minus 3 squared equals 25. So the center of my circle, this one doesn't have any h value, so it's a 0, y minus 3 squared, and then the radius is 5. All right, let's do the next one. We want our x's and y's on the same side. Any number without an x and a y goes on the other side. And now we're just going to group them together. I have x squared minus 8x plus my completing the square number plus y squared minus 4y plus my magic number equals -4 plus those numbers. Whatever I add to the left, I have to add to the right to keep my equation balanced. So half of -8 is -4. When I square that, I get 16. So this is x minus 4 squared. It is not a coincidence that when you factor it, this number is always half of this value, and it's the square root of that value. So that's kind of a check you can use. Over here, y squared minus 4y, half of -4 is -2. When I square that, I get 4. So that factors to be y minus 2 squared. Now, whatever I put in these boxes, whatever I add to the left side, I have to also add to the right side. So -4 plus 16 plus 4 is 16. The center of my circle is my h and k, 4, 2, and my radius is 4. All right, 2 more problems to practice. This one is x squared. We'll just need to group our x's and y's together. So I will do that here. X squared minus 8x plus something. And this is y squared plus 12y plus something equals, and I'm going to add my 12 to the other side and put my boxes. For the whatever number I put here, I'm also going to put on that side. So here goes. Half of 8 is -4. -4 squared is 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides so that this will factor into x minus 4 squared. Y squared plus 12y, half of 12 is 6. 6 squared is 36. So I'm going to add 36 to both sides. This side becomes y plus 6 squared. And over here, I'm going to add 12 plus 16 plus 36 and get 64. So the center of my circle, 4, -6. Remember, we're always going with the opposite sign. And the radius is 8. Okay, one more practice and I think you'll be ready to go. Group your x's together. X squared plus 8x plus some number is going to complete the square. Y squared minus 6y plus some number. And we're going to make sure that we add those same two numbers to the right side, whatever we used on the left side. So half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So this side factors to be x plus 4 squared. It's always half of that number. Y squared minus 6y, half of -6 is -3. And when I square -3, I get 9. So that factors to y minus 3 squared. And I add these together to get 25. Center of my circle is at -4, +3. And the radius is 5. So that's how we use completing the square to take the general form of a circle equation and turn it into the standard form so that we can locate the center and the radius.